For nearly 60 years, the name Fireball Roberts has burned through NASCAR history, like the blaze that took his life. Fans remember the legend, the man who raced with unmatched precision and swagger. But few knew the truth about what really happened on that tragic day in 1964. Until now. NASCAR has officially unsealed long classified internal documents surrounding the crash that killed Glenn Fireball Roberts at the World 600 in Charlotte. After decades of rumors, conspiracy theories, and unanswered questions, new evidence has come to light. Evidence that challenges everything the sport once claimed. Buried deep within those files are details about safety failures, communication breakdowns, and one particularly haunting discovery. A first-hand note from Roberts himself, written before his death. Officials now admit key procedural lapses occurred that day, admissions that were never part of the public record. For years, the story was simple: a tragic accident, a hero gone too soon. But these files tell a different story. They speak of ignored warnings, silenced reports, and a pattern of negligence that would change motorsports forever. One line in the unsealed document stands out above all. Burn log entry missing. Timeline inconsistent. That single note set off an internal investigation that NASCAR quietly buried for decades. And now, for the first time, the truth is being exposed. According to one insider familiar with the release, Fireball's final words, recorded during his final days in the hospital, were far more than a goodbye. They were a warning. Tell them what I told you. Don't let it happen again. Those words and the chilling files that confirm them might finally reveal what really killed Fireball Roberts and why the truth was hidden for so long. The early 1960s were racing's most thrilling and most perilous years, a time when courage mattered more than caution. Cars were fast, raw, and volatile, built for speed rather than safety. Gasoline sloshed inside thin metal tanks. Drivers wore cotton shirts instead of fire suits, and helmets were little more than plastic shells. Every lap was a gamble, and every crash had the potential to end a life. In that brutal world, one man stood above the rest: Glenn Fireball Roberts. He wasn't just a driver, he was a showman, a symbol of style and precision. Known for his movie star looks and his controlled aggression behind the wheel, Roberts embodied the fearless spirit of NASCAR's golden era. To fans, he was untouchable, a man who danced with danger and made it look like art. Fellow racer Ned Jarrett once said, "He wasn't just fast, he was poetry on asphalt." His skill was unmatched, his composure unshakable. He could glide through chaos like it was choreography. But behind the charm and confidence, Roberts carried a secret fear. He had seen what fire could do to men. He'd watched friends burned alive in twisted wrecks, their screams echoing through the infield. The sport's beauty and brutality haunted him. In private conversations, he told those closest to him that he didn't fear crashing, but he feared burning. "One day," he once told a mechanic, "it's going to be the fire that gets one of us." That premonition would become tragically prophetic. As NASCAR's speed climbed higher and its fame soared, the risks grew too. Roberts had become the golden face of a sport flirting with disaster, and fate was closing in fast. May 24th, 1964, the Charlotte Motor Speedway shimmered beneath the North Carolina sun. It was the morning of the World 600, one of NASCAR's biggest events of the year. Fans packed the stands, waving flags, drinking beer, and chanting names of heroes they believed were invincible. Glenn Fireball Haas Roberts rolled to the starting grid in his bright number 22 Ford, calm as ever, his hands steady on the wheel. No one knew it would be the last time he'd line up for a race. The opening laps unfolded as usual. Tight packs, roaring engines, the smell of fuel thick in the air. But on lap 7, everything unraveled. Ned Jarrett lost control of his car, spinning across the track. Roberts swerved to avoid him, but was clipped by another vehicle, sending the number 22 into the wall. In an instant, the fuel tank ruptured and the car erupted into a rolling inferno. The crowd gasped as black smoke consumed the track. Roberts was trapped inside, flames licking through the cockpit as rescuers sprinted toward the wreck. It took precious seconds, too many, for them to reach him. When they finally pulled him out, his suit was melted to his skin. Jarrett, shaken and covered in soot, later said, "I could hear him screaming inside that car." I'll never forget that sound. In that single horrifying moment, NASCAR's most beloved driver was no longer the face of speed. He was the symbol of its cost. And while fans prayed for a miracle, those closest to the garage knew that something had gone terribly wrong that day. The fire was too intense, the response too slow, and the aftermath too quiet. Glenn Roberts was rushed to Charlotte Memorial Hospital, barely clinging to life. More than 80% of his body was burned. Doctors worked relentlessly, rotating him through sterile rooms, trying to manage pain that few could imagine. The news spread fast. Newspapers filled with headlines, radio hosts choking up as they read updates. For 39 days, Fireball Roberts fought. NASCAR officials visited the hospital, reporters camped outside, and fans across the country sent letters and prayers. But behind closed doors, doctors faced grim realities. Roberts was conscious for much of his ordeal, lucid enough to speak, even to write. Nurses later described him as calm but determined, haunted by a single question: why did it take so long? In the hospital's internal notes, records later referenced in the unsealed files, there was mention of something called the burn log. It detailed treatment times, rescue intervals, and medical procedures from the crash scene to the ICU. But sometime after his death, that log disappeared from the hospital archives. One nurse recalled a man arriving days later with official credentials, signing out the folder for review on behalf of NASCAR. It was never seen again. To the public, Fireball was a hero battling impossible odds. To those who saw the inside of the hospital, he was a man unraveling a mystery with his last breaths, trying to understand how a sport that built him up could have failed him so completely. In the days following the crash, the garage area fell into a heavy silence. Mechanics spoke in whispers, drivers avoided eye contact, and NASCAR officials pushed for business as usual. But rumors spread quickly. Crews who had seen the wreck up close began to question everything, especially the fuel systems that had turned Roberts' car into an inferno. One veteran mechanic told reporters off the record, "We'd been warning NASCAR for months about those tanks. They were bombs waiting to go off." Others mentioned missing extinguishers, untrained track crews, and delays in response time that cost Roberts precious seconds. Behind the scenes, several team owners demanded answers, but the officials were firm. There would be no public blame, no investigation beyond the basics. Then another layer of mystery emerged. Several insiders claimed Fireball himself had written a memo to NASCAR weeks before the crash, raising concerns about fuel leaks, venting, and the lack of proper safety gear. He reportedly told a friend, "It's not if, it's when." That memo was never made public, and for decades, most believed it never existed, until the unsealed documents proved otherwise. The files referenced a letter logged under Safety Recommendations, G. Roberts, dated April 1964. It was marked as received, but never acted upon. Somewhere between bureaucracy and negligence, that warning vanished. By the time the engines roared again, the following weekend, the garage was united by fear but divided by silence. Everyone knew Fireball had tried to warn them. No one dared say it out loud. The memo resurfaced, faded, water-stained, but real. It had been tucked inside a forgotten folder labeled Fuel Venting Systems. Its words were simple but devastating. Fuel venting under impact presents immediate fire hazard. Recommend immediate containment measures. Signed, Glenn, Fireball. Roberts. When NASCAR's internal notes were finally reviewed decades later, investigators discovered handwritten comments from officials who had seen the memo. One line stood out: priority low, sponsor fuel systems not to be implicated. That phrase ignited a storm of speculation. Was NASCAR protecting safety or its sponsors? The unsealed reports contained additional fragments, meeting notes, safety assessments, and references to optics management following the crash. The tone suggested image mattered as much as integrity. Rather than admit fault, the organization quietly rewrote the narrative. A tragic accident, unforeseeable and unavoidable. But the newly discovered correspondence told a darker story. A file dated 2 days after Roberts' death referenced fuel containment alternatives in test phase. Not to be disclosed until media cycle stabilizes. The implication was chilling. NASCAR knew there was a problem. They were already working on a fix. They just didn't tell anyone. For decades, that decision haunted the sport. Fireball's death became a turning point that forced safety reforms, but also a scar, a reminder that his warnings had been ignored. The memo that vanished had finally returned, and it painted a picture of a cover-up hiding in plain sight. When NASCAR's confidential archives were finally opened to historians, the details stunned even longtime insiders. Among the recovered materials was the official crash investigation report. Long believed destroyed, the findings contradicted nearly every public statement made in 1964. According to the internal summary, trackside rescue efforts were delayed by approximately 90 seconds due to a miscommunication between spotters and fire crews. The report listed it bluntly: response window compromised, visual misidentification of accident car. 90 seconds might not sound like much, but to a man burning alive, it was an eternity. Another section described experimental fuel bladders that were being tested the very weekend. Prototypes meant to prevent exactly the kind of explosion that killed Fireball Roberts. The test cars weren't in competition yet, but they existed, sitting unused in a nearby garage. The irony was unbearable. If those bladders had been approved just weeks earlier, Fireball's crash might have ended differently. Experts later confirmed that similar technology became mandatory in NASCAR shortly after his death. But by then, it was too late. The files included eyewitness statements redacted beyond recognition, suggesting internal legal review. One line, barely legible, read, "Driver indicated awareness of risk, had expressed concern." The investigation concluded with a phrase that would echo through racing history. This was not solely an accident of circumstance. It was an accident of system. For 60 years, that sentence remained buried. Now unsealed, it exposed a painful truth. Fireball Roberts didn't just die in a race car. He died in a system that knew how dangerous it was and chose to look the other way. For decades, fans believed the final words of Fireball Roberts were lost to history. Then, deep within a family estate collection in Daytona, a small black notebook surfaced. It was weathered, brittle, and nearly forgotten. A diary Roberts reportedly kept during his final weeks in the hospital. At first, many doubted its authenticity, but handwriting experts compared it against known letters and confirmed it was his. Inside those pages were no racing stats, no talk of fame, only pain, regret, and resolve. Written in shaky pen strokes, one line read, "If I can walk again, I'm going to make sure no one burns like this." The entry was dated 12 days before his death. In another, he wrote about his desire to retire after the season and focus on developing safer race car designs. He even listed names of engineers he wanted to contact, including one who would later help pioneer fuel cell technology. The diary painted a man transformed by suffering, still proud, still stubborn, but broken by the system he loved. Friends recalled that even in agony, Roberts spoke about the other drivers more than himself. He didn't fear dying. He feared what would happen if NASCAR refused to change. After his passing, the diary disappeared, traded between collectors, buried in private archives. Its resurfacing decades later reignited the debate about NASCAR's responsibility. Whether it was a confession, a plea, or a prophecy, it revealed a side of Fireball the world had never seen. Not just a racer, but a reformer. A man who, with his last strength, tried to make the sport safer for those who'd follow him. When NASCAR finally addressed the newly unsealed documents, it came quietly, an understated press conference that few expected. Officials confirmed that several procedural failures had occurred during the 1964 World 600. Delayed responses, lost communication logs, missing safety records. They acknowledged that the burn log and Roberts' original safety memo had been removed from official archives during an internal review in the 1970s. The statement was brief but historic. We cannot change the past, but we can ensure it never repeats. Modern NASCAR drivers responded emotionally. Many admitted that every fire suit, every fuel cell, and every layer of flame-resistant gear they wear today exists because of what happened to Fireball Roberts. Hall of Famer Bobby Allison said, "We all owed him our lives. We just didn't know it then." Historians called the disclosure a reckoning long overdue. It wasn't just about admitting mistakes. It was about giving credit where it was owed. Fireball's crash had sparked an evolution that saved countless lives. The tragedy that nearly ended NASCAR in its infancy instead became the catalyst that defined its survival. But even as the press conference ended, journalists noticed something strange. In the corner of the released files was one final document, an envelope dated July 1st, 1964, labeled simply, "Personal, do not publish." Inside was a single page, handwritten hours before Roberts passed. Its existence had never been acknowledged, until now. The final note was brief, barely a paragraph, but it silenced everyone who read it. In a trembling hand, Glenn Fireball Roberts had written, "Tell them I saw it coming. Don't let them race like this again." Those were his last recorded words. Not a complaint, not a goodbye, a warning. When the letter was made public, it struck the racing world like a lightning bolt. Fans wept. Old drivers who had once raced beside him spoke through tears. NASCAR officials placed the letter in the Hall of Fame archives, calling it the conscience of the sport. The truth, hidden for nearly 60 years, had finally been spoken in Fireball's own voice. In the years that followed, his name became more than a legend. It became a standard. Every driver who straps in today, surrounded by flame-retardant materials, fuel bladders, and safety crews, does so because one man saw the danger coming and tried to stop it. The tragedy of Charlotte 1964 wasn't just a story of loss, it was the turning point that built the foundation of modern racing safety. The fire that claimed Fireball Roberts didn't extinguish his spirit. It ignited a movement that still burns within every garage, every track, every heart that dares to chase speed. The truth wasn't buried in conspiracy. It was buried in paperwork, in fear, in silence. Fireball Roberts didn't just die in a crash. He died trying to save everyone who would ever follow him. One man's fire built the safety of generations.